Racist judge finds black man, then learns he's a federal prosecutor. Marcus Reed came back to his hometown on a quiet Sunday, the kind of day when the air smells like cut grass and old memories. He was in his mid-30s, tall, well-spoken, and calm in a way that made people lower their voices around him. He had taken a week off to help his mother sort through a house full of life, boxes of photos, recipe cards with flour on them, and the clock that still chimed late by 2 minutes. The plan was simple. Pack, fix what needed fixing, and meet a realtor about listing the place. He wasn't planning to get noticed. He liked it that way. On the second evening, after dropping a bundle of donations at a thrift store and buying a box of light bulbs at the hardware shop on Main Street, he drove home along the back roads he used to take as a kid. The sun was low and glare sat on the windshield. He slowed at a four-way stop where the paint on the lines had faded. For a moment he thought his wheels had stopped fully. Maybe they rolled a little. He could not tell. 2 blocks later, a blue light bloomed in his rearview mirror. He felt that small knot inside his chest. He took a breath, signaled, and pulled to the side. The officer walked up with a flashlight and a voice that was all business. License and registration. Marcus handed them over and explained where he was headed, the old house, the packing, the plan to get everything done before Friday. The officer said he had rolled through the stop and had a broken tail light. Marcus turned his head and saw the red cover on the passenger side had a hairline crack he had not noticed before. He said politely, "I didn't realize that was broken. I'll get it fixed first thing tomorrow." The officer nodded but said nothing that sounded like mercy. He returned to his cruiser. The minutes stretched. When the officer came back, he had a small stack of paper. The handwriting was dense and careful. It was more than Marcus expected, a citation for the stop sign, one for the tail light, and a court appearance because, the officer said, the fines had to be handled downtown. Marcus tried to ask a question. The officer kept his eyes on the paper. He explained the date and the building and how to pay if the judge allowed it. Then he asked Marcus to sign the promise to appear. Marcus signed. He drove away slow, palms dry on the steering wheel, telling himself to stay calm. He had handled bigger things than this. Still, it stung not the money, but the feeling that he was being treated like a problem rather than a person. Back at the house, his mother looked worried when he told her. She had worked for the county once, filing records and answering phones. "Wear a jacket," she said. "Be respectful, keep your answers short. That courtroom has a way of making folks feel small." He smiled and said he always tried to be respectful. He ironed a shirt that night and checked the tail light in the driveway with a small flashlight from the junk drawer. The crack was new. It must have happened when someone at the store pushed a cart too close, or maybe when a box shifted in the trunk. Either way, he would fix it first thing. He took a picture for his own record. He slept light. The next morning, he bought a replacement tail light at a parts store and installed it in the parking lot with a Phillips screwdriver the cashier lent him. He kept the receipt. He also drove back to the stop sign in daylight and took photos. The paint really was faded. The sign itself was halfway hidden by a leaning branch. He knew none of this would erase the ticket, but facts helped him think clearly. He put the photos and receipts in a neat folder and slipped it into a leather portfolio he kept for work. He also placed his bar card in his wallet, right where he could reach it, even though he did not plan to show it. He wanted to walk into that room like any other person and see how the process treated him. Court day came 2 mornings later. The building was old brick with a clock tower and a door that stuck before it opened. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of dust and coffee. People sat on long benches outside the courtroom in their Sunday best and their only clean jeans. A nervous father kept whispering instructions to his teenage son. A woman rubbed a folded citation with her thumb like it might smooth out the trouble. A young public defender sat with a small stack of files and a face that said she had learned to listen faster than most people could talk. Marcus checked in at the clerk's window, said his name, and took a seat on the last bench. When the doors opened, the shuffling began. Everyone stood when the judge entered. The judge wore the robe like armor. His voice had a sharp edge that did not soften even when he spoke routine words. He started with rules: phones away, hats off, no talking, and he repeated them in a tone that felt more scolding than helpful. He called the first case. A college kid with a parking ticket stepped up, hands like birds flitting between pockets. The judge asked a few questions. The fine was reduced a little, with a warning to grow up. One by one, people took their turn. Marcus listened. He noticed a pattern that made his stomach tighten. When certain defendants spoke, the judge gave them more time to explain, even smiled sometimes. For others, he spoke over their first sentence, told them to keep it short, and raised his voice at small things like "I was late to work" or "I already fixed it." It wasn't only the words. It was the tone, the weight he put on each breath, which people he interrupted, who got a second chance to finish a thought, who left with a lighter fine, and who walked away heavier. Marcus kept his face still and his mind active. He took small notes: time, case type, outcome. He did not write opinions, only facts. He knew facts tell a story all by themselves. When his name was called, he stood and smoothed his jacket and walked to the table. The clerk stared at him as if measuring something. The judge scanned the citation and looked up. Address. Marcus gave it. The judge looked back at the paper and asked his job. Marcus said, "I work in law." The judge's eyebrows rose, the way some people raise them when they are already forming a judgment. "In law," he said. "So you know the rules?" Marcus said, "Yes, Your Honor. I try to follow them." Marcus explained, in short sentences, that he had repaired the tail light the next morning and had the receipt. He said he might have misjudged the stop because of glare, and he had returned to photograph the intersection. He offered to show the photos. The judge waved off the photos with a motion of the hand, like brushing crumbs off a table. "We are not doing a science project here," he said. "You rolled the stop. You had a broken light. The law is the law." He spoke in a way that made the room feel smaller. When Marcus tried to add that he had taken responsibility and fixed the problem, the judge cut him off and said, "Do not interrupt me." The fine he read out was the maximum on the schedule for the rolling stop, plus court costs, plus the full fee for the equipment violation. Marcus had just watched another defendant, earlier that hour, get a reduced fine for a similar equipment issue after showing proof of repair. He knew the difference was not written in any book he had read. He felt the heat behind his eyes, not from anger, but from the effort of staying steady, of holding the lines of his face in a calm shape. He thanked the court, because that is what you do, and asked if he could submit his receipt and a copy of the photos to the record anyway. The judge said he could file them with the clerk if it made him feel better. There was laughter from one corner of the gallery, and the judge did not quiet it. Marcus did not argue. He did not raise his voice or reveal his title. He reminded himself of a rule he had learned long ago: the way one person treats you does not change who you are. He walked to the clerk's window, paid the amount in full, and asked politely for a copy of the docket list, the standing fine schedule, and instructions to request the audio recording of his hearing. The clerk looked surprised at that last part. "You want the audio?" she asked, as if only reporters or lawyers would ask. Marcus said yes, he would like it, and the clerk slid a form under the glass. He filled it out with careful letters and returned it, keeping the yellow carbon copy. In the hallway, two people approached him. One was the young public defender from earlier. The other was a man in a work jacket who had sat 2 rows behind Marcus. The public defender spoke first, soft but urgent, like someone trying not to be overheard. "I can't say much," she said, "but you're not the only person who's noticed." Tone. She searched for a safe word. "Inconsistency," she said at last. The man in the work jacket nodded and said he had gotten a harsher fine for something small, too. He scribbled his number on a scrap of paper. "In case you need someone to say what it felt like," he said. Marcus thanked them both and tucked the paper next to his receipt. He walked out into the sunlight, which felt brighter than it should after the dim courtroom. He did not feel like a winner or a loser. He felt like a witness. He had what he came for, even if he had not known it when the blue lights came on behind him, a clear look at how that room worked. He drove back to his mother's house with the radio low. When he pulled into the driveway, she came out onto the porch and studied his face. "You did fine," she said, before he even spoke. He smiled and told her he had paid, he had the papers, and he had asked for the audio. She nodded, proud of his calm. That night, at the kitchen table, with the old clock chiming late as always, Marcus sorted his papers into neat stacks. Receipts. Photos. The request form for the audio. He wrote down times and names while they were still fresh. He did not write what he felt. He didn't need to. The facts sat there on the table, as solid as the wood beneath them. He resisted the thought of using his position to push back. He knew the rules that govern his life and his work. There were proper channels for concerns about fairness in a courtroom. If he ever took a step, it would be by the book. He looked at the calendar on the wall. There was time to help his mother pack the china, time to meet the realtor, time to sit on the porch and listen to the crickets. There would also be time to decide what to do with the folder he had built today. He closed it and ran his hand over the leather cover. He did not plan to make a scene or raise a voice. He planned to stay himself, steady, careful, and guided by facts. And in that quiet house, with the dishes drying on the rack and a cardboard box labeled "Donate" by the door, he felt a kind of resolve form, not loud, not angry, just clear. Whatever came next, he would meet it with the same calm he had carried into that room, and he would let the record speak. Marcus woke before the sun and sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the folder he had built the day before. The old clock on the wall ticked a little too loud in the quiet house. He laid out everything again as if the simple act of straightening edges could make the world line up. On one side, the citations, the receipt for the repaired tail light, his notes from the courtroom, and the yellow copy of the audio request form. On the other side, blank paper, a pen, and a plan to gather more facts. He reminded himself of the promise he had made to his mother and to himself: stay calm, stay careful, let the record speak. His mother padded into the kitchen in her slippers and wrapped her hands around a mug. "What's next?" she asked, gentle, like she was asking about a grocery list. Marcus said he wanted to follow the process as any person could. He would ask when the audio would be ready, request public information that the law allowed him to see, and record what he observed. Nothing extra, no drama. She nodded and set a plate of toast on the table, the same way she had done when he was a student studying for exams. The habit made him smile. Some routines were stronger than time. After breakfast, Marcus drove to the courthouse records window. The hallway was busy but quiet, a rustle of paper and the soft ping of a service bell now and then. The clerk from the day before recognized him. Her eyebrows lifted a fraction, the way people do when they expect an argument. Marcus spoke in a calm voice. He asked if there was an estimated date for the audio file. The clerk said it usually took a few business days, but he could check back by phone. He asked if the court posted a written fine schedule and any policy about reducing fines when a person showed proof of repair. The clerk pointed to a bulletin board with a summary page and directed him to the city website for more detail. He thanked her, wrote down the URL, and stepped aside so the next person could move forward. Instead of leaving, he sat on a hallway bench and opened his folder. He copied the citation numbers and the time his case had been called. He listed the few cases he had observed before his own, no names, just the basic details he could remember: parking, equipment, speed, whether the judge allowed an explanation, and the result. He had not planned to do any of this when he woke up yesterday, but now that he had started, a steady rhythm pulled him along. Facts, time, outcome, simple notes any person could take, notes that did not accuse, only described. On his way out, he saw the young public defender at the elevator, juggling a stack of files. She looked tired in the way people look when they carry both work and worry. Marcus asked if she had a minute. She checked the floor indicator and nodded. He told her he was collecting public information and wanted to understand how to do it properly. He did not say his title. He did not need to. She explained that some records were online and some had to be requested from the clerk or the city records officer. Keep it specific, she said. Case numbers, dates. Broad fishing trips take longer. She hesitated, then added, and be patient. People want to do things right, but they're busy. The elevator opened and a tide of people spilled out. She gave him the phone number for the city records officer on a yellow sticky note, smiled in a way that said good luck, and disappeared into the crowd. Marcus spent the next hour at the public library. The librarian showed him where the city posted ordinances and schedules on a public terminal. He printed the fine schedule for common traffic violations and a brief notice that said judges could consider proof of repair as a factor. He also printed a page explaining the process to request audio recordings and transcripts. The language was dry but exact, which he appreciated. He slid the papers into his folder and returned the librarian's pencil with a thank you that made her blush as if she didn't hear that word enough in a day. On the sidewalk outside, his phone buzzed. It was the man who had given him a number in the hallway, the one with the work jacket. Name's Eddie, the man said. I don't know much about forms, but I know how it felt. If you write anything up, you can count me as someone who saw the way that room goes. Marcus thanked him and said he wasn't writing an article. He was collecting facts first. Eddie said he respected that. Sometimes facts take longer than feelings, he said, and hung up. Marcus walked to a small cafe on the corner and ordered tea. He opened his folder again and drew a simple grid on fresh paper. Row by row, he wrote the details he had seen. He kept his handwriting neat. The woman at the next table glanced at the pages and then at him with cautious curiosity. He offered a polite smile and returned to his work. He was not hiding, but he wasn't looking for attention either. When his tea cooled, he called the city records officer and left a brief message: his name, the date of his hearing, the specific items he was requesting, and his contact information. He said he was happy to pay reasonable copy costs. He kept the message short, exact, and kind. In the afternoon, he went back to the intersection where he had taken the photos. The sun stood high, and the branch still leaned across part of the sign. He watched how drivers handled the faded lines. Some stopped hard. Some drifted. He did not draw conclusions about anyone. He just watched for a few minutes, thinking about how small details shape big outcomes. He snapped one more picture when a cloud moved and glare flashed over the hood of a passing car. The image caught the brightness exactly where it might hide motion. He did not know if it would matter to anyone else. It mattered to him because it was part of the truth of that corner. Back at the house, his mother had spread old family photos across the dining table. He sat with her for an hour, naming faces and dates. The softness of that task balanced the tight focus of his morning. When they finished, he returned to the kitchen and arranged his notes like a teacher arranging a lesson. He called the court again to confirm that his audio request was logged. It was. He wrote down the time and the name of the person who confirmed it. He did not press. He believed in giving people time to do their jobs. As evening settled, Marcus took a slow walk around the block. He passed the school where he had learned to read maps and long division. He passed the park where he had run laps before the track team got new uniforms. A neighbor watering roses said hello and asked about his mother. The ordinary things people say in ordinary neighborhoods stitched the day into something steady. He felt the tightness in his shoulders loosen just a little. The folder under his arm felt like a small book he had written in one day, a book of facts with no adjectives. When he turned back toward home, his phone rang again. This time it was a legal aid attorney the public defender had mentioned. "I heard you're collecting public info," the attorney said, voice level, professional. Marcus said yes, only public info, and explained he was keeping a narrow scope. The attorney said their office had heard similar concerns from clients about tone, about interruptions, about uneven outcomes for similar violations. "We're cautious by nature," the attorney said. "We'd never assume motive. But we do care about consistency." Marcus listened and took notes. The attorney explained how trends could be shown without naming people, case numbers only, violation types, dates, outcomes. The point was not to shame anyone, but to make sure the system worked the same way for everyone. Marcus agreed. They exchanged email addresses. He did not give his title. He did not want the conversation to bend around it. Later that night, he sat again at the kitchen table. The old clock chimed late. He added a new sheet to his grid and labeled the columns more clearly. He was not building a case. He was building clarity. He wrote a short summary of his own hearing, time, what he said, what the judge said, the fine, the clerk's instructions, the audience reaction. He wrote the words the judge had used, only the ones that belonged in the record, not the tone, not the raised eyebrows, not the sigh that made the room feel colder. The words were enough. They could be matched against the fine schedule. They could be compared to the other outcomes he had observed before his name had been called. He thought about the laughter in the gallery when the judge brushed off his photos. He thought about the way the judge had accepted proof of repair for someone else earlier that same morning. He wrote a single sentence on a separate page: "In similar situations, the approach changed." He underlined the words "similar situations," then put his pen down. He did not write why he believed the approach had changed. He knew what he had felt, but feelings are not the same as facts, and he wanted this folder to hold only what a person could carry into a room without raising their voice. Before he went to bed, he called the number on the sticky note one more time and left a thank you for the public defender, no questions, just gratitude for the guidance. He also sent an email to the legal aid attorney with a scanned copy of the public fine schedule and the blank grid he had designed, in case their office wanted to use a clean template. He invited them to suggest a better way to lay out the information. He wrote, "My goal is accuracy. If you have a clearer method, I will use it." He read the sentence twice before pressing send. It sounded like him, steady, careful, open to correction. Sleep came slowly. He lay awake and listened to the hum of the refrigerator and the crickets outside. He pictured the courtroom benches and the people who had sat on them. He wanted two things that do not always arrive together: kindness and structure. He could not control kindness, not from other people. But structure, clear rules, fair process, facts on paper, that part he could help build. He decided to call the city records office again the next afternoon if he had not heard back. He would not push hard. He would simply ask if there was anything more he could do to make the request easier to fulfill. In the morning, he rose early again. He fixed the loose kitchen cabinet hinge with a small screwdriver, the same one he had used to change the tail light. The motion felt symbolic in a quiet way: tighten what is loose, make small things work the way they should. His mother laughed when the door closed without a squeak. "You make it look easy," she said. He told her it was not easy. It was just careful. She nodded as if that explained the world. By mid-morning, his phone buzzed with a short voicemail from the records officer. They had located the audio and would send a link when it was ready to download. He saved the message and wrote down the time. He didn't celebrate. He simply felt a calm line draw itself across his thoughts. The process was moving. That was enough for now. He returned to the cafe with his folder and, this time, a laptop. He typed his notes into a simple table, one line per case he had observed. He added his own case at the bottom. He did not color code anything. He did not write conclusions in the margins. He kept the file plain, like a blank page waiting for careful readers. He paused often, checked each entry twice, and saved the document with a name that stated exactly what it was, court_observations_day1_table. At the next table, 2 high school students were studying civics. One read aloud from a textbook about fairness and due process. The words sounded like a promise spoken in a steady voice. Marcus glanced at the screen in front of him and at the folder by his elbow. He believed in that promise. He also believed in doing his part to keep it honest. He closed the laptop, slid his papers into the folder, and stood. He had errands to run for his mother, a new lamp for the porch, a roll of shipping tape, a box of labels. Life went on, even when something important asked for attention. He decided he could hold both at once, the small kindness of a fixed hinge and the large duty of a clear record. As he stepped into the sunlight, the day felt a degree brighter, not because anything had been fixed, but because he had taken the next right step. He had not raised his voice. He had not used who he was as a lever. He had asked for what any person could ask for and had written down what any person could see. The rest would come when it came. Meanwhile, he would keep gathering facts, keep being patient, and keep his compass set on fairness. The folder under his arm was still light enough to carry, and that felt like a good sign. Marcus woke up early to a quiet house and a bright notification on his phone. The city records office had sent a short email with a download link for the courtroom audio. He made coffee, set his laptop on the kitchen table, and put on headphones. The old clock ticked behind him as he pressed play. Voices filled his ears, the clerk calling names, the shuffle of shoes, the judge's sharp reminders about rules, a nervous cough in the gallery. He slid a notebook closer and wrote down the time stamps. He paused whenever he heard a key phrase and wrote the words exactly as they were spoken. He was careful to capture only facts, not feelings. The record would speak if he let it. He listened through his own case once, then again. He wrote the exact point where he had tried to show the receipt for the repaired light, the exact moment the judge waved it away, the exact words, "We are not doing a science project here." He did not add adjectives. He did not write what his stomach had felt in that moment. He simply wrote the time, the sentence, and a small arrow to the fine schedule he had printed at the library. When he lifted the headphones, the kitchen felt too quiet, like a room after rain. His mother came in with a soft smile and set an apple on a plate. "How is it?" she asked. "Clear," he said. "That helps." He knew he had to make another call, the most important one. Marcus was a federal prosecutor, and that fact mattered not because of status, but because of rules. He could not use his position to push a personal problem. He could not use letterhead or office time or official weight to move anything that was about him. But he also had a duty, as any person does, to report conduct that might harm the public's trust. He scrolled to a number labeled Ethics Advisor and stepped onto the porch where the morning light turned the railing pale gold. He explained the situation carefully, a personal traffic matter, a public courtroom, uneven treatment he had observed, and the audio he now had. The advisor listened like a raft, steady and quiet. Then he answered in a measured tone. Marcus could file a complaint as a private citizen and a witness. He must use personal contact information, not office resources. He should keep the scope narrow and factual, dates, times, quotes, comparison to the posted fine schedule. He could not ask for special treatment for his own case or suggest any outcome for others. If the commission asked who he was, he should answer honestly, but he should not lead with his title or try to pressure anyone. Think of yourself as a note-taker for the truth, the advisor said. Stay in bounds. Let the system work. Marcus thanked him. He felt both lighter and more focused, as if the path had bright borders now. He returned to the table and began the patient work of finding patterns without forcing them. The city's public portal let him search dockets by date and violation type. He looked only at the sessions near his own. He created a simple table: case number, violation, proof of repair presented, interruptions noted on audio, fine amount, reduction yes/no. He did not record names. He was not building a story about people, he was testing consistency. As he entered each line, he returned to the fine schedule posted online: ranges, notes, the line that said judges could consider proof of repair. Sometimes the outcomes aligned. Sometimes they did not. He did not write why. He just recorded that they did or didn't. In the afternoon, he met the legal aid attorney at a coffee shop with a big window and a steady hum. She brought a small folder of anonymized numbers from clients who had come through that courtroom in the past months. She set the folder on the table the way a person sets down something delicate. We don't assume motive, she said. We look for drift when similar facts lead to different results. Marcus nodded. He showed her his simple grid and asked if there was a clearer way to lay it out. She traced a finger down a column and suggested one more field: explanation aloud, y/n. He added it. She also mentioned 2 community members who were willing to write statements describing what they had witnessed about tone and interruptions. Only if they want to, Marcus said. No pressure. The attorney agreed. The goal was not heat. The goal was clarity. That night, he drafted his complaint to the State Judicial Conduct Commission. He wrote it in plain language and short paragraphs. He began with the date and time of his appearance. He explained that he had paid his fine and was not asking for any special relief. He attached the audio timestamps from his hearing and, where relevant, audio timestamps from other cases that same morning. He referenced the public fine schedule and the line about proof of repair. He did not draw conclusions about intent. Instead, he listed examples where similar circumstances appeared to result in different outcomes, and he asked the commission to review the docket for a broader period to see whether a pattern existed. He suggested training and clear written standards if the commission found inconsistency. He signed with his home address, his personal email, and his phone number. He did not mention his job in the body of the letter. In the last line, he added, "I am available as a witness and will answer any questions honestly." The next morning, he printed the letter, initialed each page, scanned it, and sent it by email and certified mail. He put the receipt in his folder. Then he turned to something else on the calendar, an administrative follow-up on the equipment citation, set before a different judge. It was a simple review: show the repair receipt, confirm the fix, and determine whether the standard reduction applied. Marcus gathered his papers and drove to the courthouse early. He felt calm. He would do exactly what any person could do: present a receipt and answer questions. In the lobby, a courthouse security officer looked up and did a double take. "Counselor," the officer said, stepping closer with a friendly nod. "You gave that training at the community center last year, the one with the federal prosecutors about scams and safety." "I brought my daughter." Marcus smiled and shook his hand. "Good to see you," he said. The greeting was warm, ordinary. It did not feel like a reveal. But sound carries in big halls. A clerk at the sign-in table glanced over. "You're an attorney?" she asked as he handed in his form. "Yes," he said. "I'm here on my own matter." She checked a box that asked attorney, because the form had one. There was no line for where. But word moves faster than paper. When the courtroom doors opened, Marcus took a seat near the back. He noticed the first judge from his earlier hearing stepping into the hallway, speaking to someone about a scheduling change. The security officer passed by and, in a voice just above a whisper, said, "Good to see a federal prosecutor around here again," meaning the safety talks they sometimes hosted. The words floated a few feet farther than intended. The first judge's head turned, just slightly. Marcus watched the judge's eyes move, then settle forward again. Marcus kept his gaze on his folder. He felt a small twist inside, not triumph, not fear, just the awareness that the fact of his job had entered the room without his help. The administrative review started a few minutes later before the different judge. Marcus stepped up when called, greeted the court, and presented his receipt and a photo of the repaired tail light. The judge reviewed the paper, asked one calm question about the date of the repair, and nodded. "Standard reduction applies," the judge said. It was quick and clean, like a line drawn with a ruler. The clerk printed the updated record. Marcus thanked the court and stepped aside. It felt like a picture of what fairness looks like: simple, predictable, based on written policy. Out in the hallway, the public defender caught up to him. "I heard you filed something," she said softly, "or at least that you're thinking about it." Marcus said he had submitted a factual complaint as a private citizen and was ready to answer any questions from the commission. "Good," she said. "Whatever happens, sunlight helps." Then she added, "By the way, the judge from your first day knows who you are now. Be careful. And be the same as you've been, calm." Marcus nodded. "That's the plan." Back at the house, he wrote a brief note to himself, more a promise than a plan. He would not speak to media. He would not post about the case online. He would not argue with anyone in a hallway. He would answer any official questions carefully and fully, and he would keep all his notes organized so anyone could follow them. He slid the new court printout into the folder behind the repair receipt. He was not collecting trophies. He was collecting clarity. An acknowledgement email arrived from the Judicial Conduct Commission near dusk. It was formal and short. They had received his complaint and would conduct a preliminary review. If they needed more information, they would contact him. He read the last line twice: "Thank you for bringing this matter to our attention." He closed the laptop and went to sit on the porch steps with his mother. The light was soft. A neighbor's radio played a slow song. His mother handed him a glass of water and asked, "How are you?" He said he felt steady. He had done what any person could do. He had stayed within the rules he believed in. That night, he took one more look at the audio timestamps and the grid he had built. He noticed something small but important: the moments when explanations were allowed lined up neatly with the moments when reductions were granted. Where explanations were cut short, reductions were rare. He wrote one more sentence in his summary: "Opportunity to be heard appears to predict outcome." He underlined the words "appears to," because humility belongs next to any claim about patterns. Then he put down the pen. He had reached the edge of what he could do alone. The rest would belong to people whose job it was to look closely and decide. He turned off the kitchen light and let the old clock tick in the dark. Whatever people now knew about his work did not change his path. He would meet the next steps with the same care: facts first, voice low, hands steady. If anyone asked why he had done all this, he would say the same thing he had told the ethics advisor: he believed in structure and kindness, and he wanted the first to make room for the second. The folder on the table was not heavy. It held simple things: dates, quotes, receipts. But in the right hands, it might carry something larger: a way to make a room fairer for everyone who walked. The acknowledgement from the commission was short, but the effect in Marcus's small world was big. He printed the email, slid it into his folder, and went for a walk to steady himself. By the time he came back, a second message was waiting: a case number, a request for any additional materials he wished to submit, and a note asking him not to discuss the matter publicly while a preliminary review was underway. He read the lines twice. The words were calm and professional. They made the path feel clear. He took a breath, opened his laptop, and began to prepare exactly what they had asked for, no more and no less. He built a clean packet in a new document, a cover page with dates and the case number, a short list of attachments, and a one-page summary of how he gathered everything. He avoided opinion. He explained that he watched part of a docket, requested the audio of his own hearing, printed the posted fine schedule, and recorded what happened in simple tables. He included the grid he had made with columns for violation type, proof of repair offered or not, whether an explanation was allowed, and the outcome. He added the timestamps from the audio for his own case and 3 other cases from that morning where the steps were clear. He did not name anyone in the gallery. He did not describe facial expressions or tones. He wrote, "These are the words said and the outcomes recorded." Before he could send the packet, his phone rang from an unfamiliar number. The caller identified himself as an investigator assigned to the commission's intake team. His voice was even and kind, the sort of voice that holds a room at the same temperature. He asked permission to schedule a short interview to clarify Marcus's timeline and to confirm how he had obtained each document. Marcus agreed and suggested late afternoon, when he would be back from errands with his mother. They settled on a time. Marcus thanked him for the call, hung up, and wrote the appointment into the margin of his notes with a small star. He did not feel nervous. He felt like a person about to read a grocery list out loud. At the interview, which took place over a simple video call, the investigator asked steady, exact questions. Where were you seated in the courtroom? How many cases did you hear before your own? How did you request the audio? When did you make your grid? Marcus answered each one with dates and times. He held up the yellow carbon copy of the audio request and the stamped receipt for certified mail. He did not weave any story around the facts. When the investigator asked if Marcus had spoken to media, Marcus answered, "No, and I do not plan to. I intend to answer only official questions." The investigator nodded with a small smile, the kind people show when a piece fits neatly into a puzzle. He thanked Marcus for his organization and said he would follow up if the commission needed more. 2 days later, the courthouse began to feel different. It was not loud. It was not frantic. But small signs appeared, like ripples on a pond. The clerk posted a fresh copy of the fine schedule on the bulletin board in a new frame. A typed sheet appeared beside it explaining how to request audio and what to expect for timing and cost. In the hallway, a staff member wiped a smudge from the glass and stepped back to check that the pages hung straight. People noticed. One man took a phone picture. A woman read each line with her finger under the words. None of this proved anything on its own. But it made the building feel a shade more transparent. At the same time, the judge from Marcus's first hearing filed a written statement with the commission, which the investigator later summarized for Marcus. The judge said he was strict with everyone, that he ran a busy docket and did not have time for long stories, and that he followed the schedule as written. He suggested that any differences people observed were due to the specific facts of each case. Marcus did not argue with that. Specific facts do matter. He simply replied through the investigator that his materials showed moments when similar facts like proof of repair had been treated differently in the same session. He asked the commission to listen to the audio themselves. He trusted their ears. The commission did not stop with his file. They sent a request to the court for recent audio recordings and docket lists, not just from Marcus's day but from a span of weeks. Their letter was polite and formal. Inside the courthouse, the request set off a quiet shuffle. The records office pulled boxes. The clerk updated spreadsheets. A junior staffer called the city IT department to make sure large audio files could be transferred securely. No one said investigation in the halls. People said request and review. Still, the air had a careful quality as if everyone had agreed to speak a little softer and move a little straighter. Outside of official channels, the world did what it always does, it whispered. A neighbor at the grocery store said to Marcus's mother, "I hear they're looking at the court," in a tone that made the sentence sound like both good news and bad weather. A distant cousin sent Marcus a link to a local blog that loved rumors more than facts. Marcus did not click. He put his phone face down and returned to the list in front of him: bulbs, packing tape, bubble wrap, receipt for the return of an extra doorknob. He had already decided he would live in the steady lane. That meant errands and quiet meals and early mornings that smelled like coffee and soap. The public defender called to say 2 community members were willing to write short statements about what they had seen in that courtroom over the past months. Marcus asked her to remind them to keep it factual and to submit directly to the commission rather than to him. "We'll do it right," she promised. Eddie, the man with the work jacket, sent a simple note through the legal aid office: the date of his case, the words he remembered being cut off, and the amount he had paid. He wrote, "I want the next person to be heard all the way through." Marcus read the sentence twice. It was not heavy. It was honest. Meanwhile, the judge's schedule continued. Dockets rolled on. Marcus, acting only as a citizen observer, visited the courtroom once more and sat in the back for an hour. He kept his head low and his pen on the paper. He noticed something new. The judge asked, in several cases, "Is there anything else you want me to consider?" The question was short and even. It gave people a small doorway to step through with a fact. Some did. Some didn't. In 2 cases, the judge reduced fines after proof of repair was shown. Marcus wrote the outcomes into a fresh table and underlined the date. He added a small note to himself in the margin: "Change after request began." Then he crossed out the question mark. He would not guess at reason. He would just record what had happened. A week into the review, the investigator called again. The commission had pulled audio from a handful of sessions and wanted Marcus to confirm a few timestamps where the clerk's voice on the recording was hard to hear. He sat at the kitchen table with his headphones and a legal pad and played the clips, stopping and starting until he could mark the exact moments. He sent back a list with 3 times corrected to the second. He kept his reply short. "Confirmed," he wrote, and signed with his full name and personal email. Not everyone liked that sunlight had come in. Marcus knew that even before the call from an unknown reporter who left a message asking for comment on the bias allegations. He did not call back. Then a local radio host sent a cheerful email promising a balanced segment if he would appear to share his story. He typed a simple reply: "Thank you for reaching out. I'm not available for interviews." He read the line out loud to make sure it sounded like him. It did. He sent it and closed his laptop with a quiet click that felt like setting a book back on a shelf. That afternoon brought a different kind of contact. A senior clerk asked to speak with Marcus privately in the hallway. Her hands were folded around a set of keys that clinked softly when she shifted her weight. "I've worked here 22 years, she said. "We've never had a review like this. I want you to know something: most of us care very much about doing it right." Marcus believed her. He said so. He also said that reviews were not punishments, they were tools to make sure good intentions matched good outcomes. She sighed with relief in a way that made him think she had been holding her breath for days. The judge filed a supplemental statement with the commission a few days later. It clarified his view that firmness was necessary to keep the docket moving and to treat everyone the same. He wrote that if his tone had been brisk, it was because time was short and the law was the law. Marcus read the summary from the investigator and nodded. He understood busy rooms. He understood tight schedules. He also understood that a question like "Is there anything else you want me to consider?" takes 5 seconds and can change a person's day. He did not write that in any letter. He wrote it in his heart and let the record speak. When Marcus met again with the legal aid attorney, she brought a simple chart she had made from public data. It showed clusters of outcomes by violation type across several weeks. The clusters were not uniform. Some dots sat higher. Some sat lower. "We'll submit this with a note that it's preliminary," she said. "We don't draw conclusions. We ask for better data and better practices." Marcus smiled. He liked the way she said we. It sounded like community, not sides. The atmosphere at the courthouse shifted one more notch when the commission requested a brief, closed meeting with the judge and the court administrator. The notice was routine. The effect was not. Staff straightened their desks. The court administrator reviewed training materials on judicial temperament and access to justice. A flyer about language access services translation by phone and in person went up near the clerk's window. A sign reminding people of their right to request a payment plan appeared beside the credit card machine. None of this solved everything. It sent signals. Signals matter. Through it all, Marcus stayed steady. He cooked with his mother and labeled boxes. He returned the extra doorknob and kept the receipt. He updated his summary with one new sentence at the bottom: "I paid my fine and do not request a refund, my concern is future fairness." He believed the line was important, not for appearance but for truth. He wanted the room to be fair, even if his part in the story was small and quiet. On a late afternoon that smelled like rain on dust, Marcus stood on the courthouse steps after dropping off copies of a few forms the commission had requested. The security officer who had recognized him earlier stopped to chat for a moment. "Things feel different," the officer said, glancing toward the posted schedules. "We've got more questions at the window, but they're good questions." Marcus nodded and said he was glad. The officer lowered his voice and added, "The judge knows who you are now. He's been careful." Marcus did not answer that. He did not need to. Care is what the room needed, whoever brought it. That evening, the investigator called with a short update. The commission had moved from intake to a formal preliminary review. They would finish their audio checks soon and decide on next steps: dismissal, private guidance, public censure, training, or monitoring. The investigator did not predict an outcome. He did not hint. He simply thanked Marcus again for his clear materials and his respectful approach. After the call, Marcus sat for a long time on the porch with the lights off, watching the sky darken one careful shade at a time. He felt the same thing he had felt on the day he paid the fine: not triumph, not defeat, just a steady belief that facts, placed in the right hands, can bend a room toward fairness. On the table inside, the folder lay open to the page where he tracked requests and replies. Each line had a date and a check mark. It looked like a patient gardener's ledger: seed, water, sprout. Outside, a breeze moved through the trees and the old clock chimed late by 2 minutes, as if loyalty to a small flaw was part of its charm. Marcus smiled to himself. He had done his part, and others were now doing theirs. The showdown he had imagined, the kind with raised voices and quick tempers, had not come. Instead, a different kind of showdown had taken shape, one made of letters, logs, questions, and answers. It was slower. It was quieter. It was better. A week after the quiet hallway meeting and the new signs on the bulletin board, the commission's envelope arrived at Marcus's mother's house. It was plain and official, with a case number on the top line and careful paragraphs below. Marcus stood by the kitchen window while he read. The letter said the commission had reviewed audio from several sessions, compared outcomes to the posted fine schedule, and interviewed court staff. It said they had found inconsistency in how people were allowed to speak and in how proof of repair was handled. It said the judge's tone at times did not meet the standards expected for a courtroom open to the public. The letter used simple terms: uneven, interrupting, not enough listening. It did not attack. It did not praise. It spoke like a ruler laid across a page to guide a straight line. The next page listed steps. There would be a public censure. The judge would complete training on judicial temperament, bias awareness, and access to justice. The court would adopt a written policy to ask a short, clear question in all similar cases: is there anything else you want me to consider? The court would post fine schedules in the courtroom and online and keep a printed copy at the clerk's window. There would be monitoring for 1 year and a follow-up review at 6 months. Finally, a set of recent cases would be flagged for administrative review to see if adjustments or refunds were proper where proof of repair or other standard factors had been ignored. Marcus read each line twice. He put the letter in his folder and let out a breath he had been holding without noticing. 2 days later, the courthouse held a brief session before the regular docket. The judge stood at the bench with the court administrator a step behind, hands folded. The room was full but quiet, like a church right before a hymn. The judge spoke from a printed page. He said the commission had completed a review. He said he accepted their findings and would complete the training. He said his courtroom would post clear rules, keep schedules visible, and make time for people to speak in a focused way. He did not read a long apology. He read a short one. He said he was sorry for times when his words were too sharp or too quick. He said he understood that tone is part of justice, because tone opens or closes the door to being heard. He set the paper down and looked up. It was not a grand moment. It felt like a hinge moving in a door that had stuck for years. After the session, letters went out to people whose cases fell in the review window. The letters said a small team had looked again at outcomes where a repair receipt or similar factor had been presented or offered. Where a person should have received a standard reduction and did not, the court would issue a refund or a credit. Eddie got one of those letters. He called Marcus with a voice that broke into a laugh, the kind of laugh that sounds like someone putting down a heavy bag. "They're sending a check," he said. "It's not a fortune, but it says they saw me." Marcus told him he was glad. Eddie said, "I know you didn't do this for a check. I'm glad anyway." They shared a few quiet seconds, then said goodbye. Marcus also received a letter, though it said what he already knew. His equipment ticket had been reduced in the administrative review with the other judge. There would be no change to the rolling stop, and he did not expect one. He read the letter and placed it behind the receipt in his folder. He felt nothing like victory or loss. He felt alignment, like a level settling on a straight shelf. In the weeks that followed, the courthouse kept showing small signs of change. The clerk's window posted a one-page guide in simple language about how to request audio, how to ask for a payment plan, and how to submit proof of repair. A new card with a phone number for language access hung by the door. The bulletin board at the entrance held the fine schedule in large, clean print. In the courtroom, the judge's new habit took root. He asked, in each case, that short question the commission had recommended: "Is there anything else you want me to consider?" It took only a breath of time, but it changed the shape of the air. People prepared a sentence. They felt invited. They spoke about a receipt, a repair, a new job, a safe ride plan, a detail that mattered. Sometimes the outcome changed. Sometimes it stayed the same. But the chance to be heard became part of the room. The legal aid attorney sent Marcus a chart one afternoon with a note that said, "Early days, but the dots are more even." The chart showed outcomes by violation type over a month, each dot a case. The spread had drawn tighter. There were still differences, as there should be when facts are not the same, but the outliers had moved toward the middle. The public defender wrote that clients seemed less afraid to speak. "They still get nervous," she said, "but they aren't cut off as much. That changes everything." Marcus read these messages at the same kitchen table where he had first sorted his papers. He felt the room itself had learned to breathe. The commission's training sessions took place on 2 Saturdays. They brought in a retired judge who had a calm voice that could fill a room without pressing on it. He ran a short role play about interruptions, timing, and how to keep a docket moving while still letting people talk. He taught a simple hand signal clerks could use when a person needed translation. He shared an old habit of his own: Write the word listen on the top of your notes before each session. No one reported this in the news. It just happened, and then the habit stayed. Marcus kept his promise to stay small in the story. He did not join panels. He did not give interviews. When a law school asked him to speak about courage, he said he preferred to talk about process, and he sent a short outline they were free to use without him. When the public library hosted a Know Your Court night, he sat in the back row with his mother and clapped for the librarian who had helped him print the fine schedule on that early day. He shook the hands of the clerks who answered questions from the crowd. He noticed the senior clerk's keys still made that small music when she shifted her weight, and he liked the sound. At home, he finished the work he had come to do. He and his mother packed the last box of recipe cards and wrapped the clock that chimed late by 2 minutes. They walked through each room one last time, touching the walls not to say goodbye to paint, but to thank the house for all the days it had held. The realtor put a sign in the yard. The grass was cut. The porch light worked now that he had fixed the loose wire. On the last evening, they ate sandwiches on the steps and watched the sky turn the color of a clean slate. His mother said, "I'm proud of the way you handled all of it." He said, "Me too, not because it was big, but because it was steady." She nodded like a judge who had heard enough and was ready to give a simple, fair ruling. Before he left town, Marcus walked once more to the courthouse, not to sit inside, but to stand across the street and look at the front doors. People went in and came out. Some smiled. Some frowned. Most looked like people who wanted to get through a hard day with dignity. He thought about how small tools, signs, questions, training, posted schedules do not fix the world, but they fix the part of the world that fits inside a room. A room like that spreads its shape, because people leave it and carry the feeling with them to other rooms. The commission sent a 6-month note to the court. It said the monitoring would continue through the year, that feedback from the public had improved, and that the court had met the new posting and access goals. It recommended keeping the one-page guide at the window forever and suggested another round of training for new staff each spring. The judge sent a short reply that said, "We will." There were no fireworks. There was a plan. Eddie called again one Saturday to say the check had arrived and already gone to pay a bill. "It's not just the money," he said. "It's the paper that says they looked again. I put that letter on the fridge." Marcus laughed. He said the letter was the best part. Eddie paused and then said, "I tell my boy the story when we drive past the courthouse. I tell him to be calm and keep his papers. I tell him the room listens now." Marcus held the phone close and said, "That's the whole point." Back in his own city, Marcus returned to his regular work. He handled cases that had nothing to do with traffic or fines. He met with witnesses and agents and community groups. When young lawyers asked him what he had learned from his week at his mother's house, he said, "Write things down. Ask for the record. Stay polite. Know the policy. Give people a door to speak through." He kept the folder from that week on a shelf at home, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that patience is a tool as strong as any statute. One evening, months later, his phone buzzed with a message from the public defender. She wrote, "I don't know if you check voicemail often, but the waiting room is quieter. People can breathe." He played the voice clip. In it, he could hear the faint murmur of a hallway, the ping of a service bell, and a clerk's friendly voice explaining how to request audio. It sounded like small things lined up. It sounded like a room keeping its promise. Marcus stood at his window and watched the lights of his city blink on, one by one, like patient answers to a long test. He thought of his mother's porch, the framed fine schedule, the new question at the bench, the check on Eddie's fridge, the retired judge's handwritten listen, the librarian's pencil, the senior clerk's keys, the security officer's quiet pride. He thought of the first day, the sharp voice, the laughter that went unchecked, the way his hands had stayed still on the table even when his chest felt tight. He thought of the old clock chiming late by 2 minutes and how that small flaw had felt, for a time, like a lesson. Perfection is not required, only direction. He closed his eyes and pictured the courthouse doors again. In his mind, they moved on their hinges with less effort than before. He did not need to step inside to know what would happen there tomorrow. A person would stand, and the judge would ask the small, important question, "Is there anything else you want me to consider?" The person would answer. The answer would be heard. The outcome would be written. The record would speak. Marcus smiled and turned away from the window. He set the folder on a higher shelf and let his hand rest there for a second. Then he walked into his kitchen, made tea, and planned the next day like any other day. The story was not about him. It never had been. It was about a room that learned to be fair by listening. It was about small steps that stayed taken. It was about a steady man who trusted that simple tools, facts, notes, patience, and a clear question could change the shape of a day, and, quietly, the shape of a place.